What is going on, Internet? I am the Maskman. Now, R. Kelly is one of the few subjects that I really don't want to cover. I really don't want to cover it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to have any conversation on it because certain subjects, certain topics, people people's minds are so made up. They are so sure of their opinion. They are so firm in their position. They are so committed and married to their point of view that nothing you can really say is going to sway them one way or the other. So it creates a situation where you're not communicating, where you're not having a conversation, where you're having an argument, or you're having a powwow. And by powwow, I mean either you're agreeing with each other and patting yourself on the back because you agree with each other, or you're having a powwow to sit around and just throw hate and throw vitriol, and you're glad you have a hate partner. So R. Kelly is one of those topics that people aren't willing to budge one way or the other from whatever they think. So I really don't want to, like make a lot of videos about R. Kelly or talk about R. Kelly in any great detail because you already feel how you feel. And I wouldn't be covering this at all if I hadn't listened to the Breakfast Club little review of R. Kelly's GQ interview. Now, they shitted on his interview, and they shitted on his interview very hard, and they said that it was filled with lies and that it was bullshit, that it was a waste of time. Charlemagne complained in great detail about ever having read it. And they just basically, you know, showed great disdain and great hatred for, well, I'm not going to say hatred, but just great disdain and just a supreme level of disrespect for R. Kelly, and for, in particular, for him doing this interview. Now, because of some of the things that they said, one of the things in particular, Charlemagne was very, very pissed off and very, very upset that R. Kelly acted or pretended not to know who Dave Chappelle was. He was very upset by that. So that thing in particular made me want to go out and look at the interview for myself and see exactly what R. Kelly said. Now, I read the R. Kelly interview, um, and it is, I wouldn't say long. I mean, it was about a third the size of the Serena Williams Person of the Year, Sports Person of the Year interview. It was about a third of that. So it was long, but it wasn't that long for somebody who is an okay reader like I am. I'm an okay reader. I'm a terrible writer, but I'm an okay reader, you know. So, um a couple of things stood out to Charlemagne, and a couple of things pissed Charlemagne off. Two things in particular that I can remember from the interview. Now, I'll leave a link to the Breakfast Club's interview, and I will leave a link to the article because you can find it online, or at least I found it online. But my computer is very, very much a piece of shit, so I had to actually read the physical copy in the newsstand. So that's how I read it. But if I can find it, if it's still available, I'll leave a link to that so you can read it for yourself. But I will address two of his main points, and then I will, go over the overall interview and my impression of the interview and my impression of the events and everything surrounding the interview and why it happened in black media. Um, One of the two things that bothered Charlemagne was R. Kelly saying that he's a better reader now because he can do voice to text speech. And Charlemagne made a point of saying that speaking into a phone is not reading. So that was like one of his major points, one of his major disses. Now, he said he read the whole article, and he kept saying, unfortunately, he read the whole article. But if he read the whole article, you'll see in the actual article that he said his daughter helped him with the talk to speech feature on his phone, and that's helping making him a better reader. He speaks into the phone, which is speaking. That is not typing, that is not reading. But when somebody actually texts him back, he can take his time and read their text. So he isn't texting, but he's reading. So because of the feature and because he's able to engage people on a regular basis through texting, he talks and they text him back. He gets more experience learning how to read. So that wasn't just some random bullshit that he pulled out of the air. It makes sense. And you flip that to make it just sound like it was complete bullshit. It wasn't complete bullshit. Now, the other thing that he was very pissed off about was Dave Chappelle and R. Kelly acting as if he didn't know who Dave Chappelle was. Now, I go back and forth in my mind about when, when I'm going to make the Dave Chappelle video. If I ever get good at this and I ever have the time to do an ample amount of research, really dig down deep into comedy, I may do a video on Dave Chappelle that I'll charge money for, because I really have a lot to say, not just about Dave Chappelle, but about people's opinion of who Dave Chappelle is and his place and his rank and his level in comedy. Now, Dave Chappelle is a pretty famous person. Reasonably speaking, if you are a person who is aware of things, you should be familiar with who Dave Chappelle is. Dave Chappelle, if you had a top 10 list of who are the 10 most famous people in America, I think Dave Chappelle would be somewhere on that list. I mean, he's that big, he's that large as far as a famous person goes. But if you read the interview in the beginning, before they ever got to the sexual allegations, before they got to, the hard questions, Art he was asked, the interviewer, which I don't know if the interviewer was white or black. I'm assuming the interviewer was white. But the interviewer asked him about his albums, because he talked about R. Kelly's success, and he talked about, what R. Kelly's contribution to the music business was. But in the way that he presented it, in the way that he arranged it, it seemed as if he was trying to make R. Kelly a successful person, but not that big a deal. Like, if R like there was a tone in it as if R. Kelly was arrogant about who he was, and if he was braggadocious, he would not have a right to be. And right up in that line where he was kind of implying that, or insinuating that, he asked R. Kelly about what album would be the best representation of his work. And R. Kelly, who is an R&B god, he's a god of R&B. I'm not talking about the man. I'm talking about the work he's put in. I'm talking about the hits he's had. I'm talking about the songs. I'm talking about the music. He's one of those people who is above being ranked. He's one of those people. You don't put him in any list. You don't compare R. Kelly to anybody else. He stands out. He stands on his own. So when he was asking R. Kelly which album best represents you, which would be the best example of your style, he had trouble recalling his own albums. He had trouble, R. Kelly had trouble remembering what albums he had put out. Now, this could be due to the fact that he has trouble reading. So, maybe he had trouble remembering what he put out, but he had trouble remembering what album came first, which albums had which songs on it, what the names of certain albums were. He had difficulty with that. So from that point, I want you to put that in your mind. Now let's go from himself, R. Kelly, one of the biggest one of the most talented, most established, one of the most enormous bodies of work in music to ever live. One of the greatest to ever live. And now you look at him speaking on Dave Chappelle. Now, I'm not trying to imply that R. Kelly did not know who Dave Chappelle was. But if you read what he said and you read how it was written, then you'll know that that wasn't him saying, he never said, I don't know who Dave Chappelle is. He was saying Dave Chappelle is not important enough for me to know who he is. It's like Dave Chappelle is not relevant to me. He was like, if you want a visual of what he probably did in the room, he was like, Dave Chappelle, the comedian, he was like, Chappelle? Dave Chappelle, comedian, right? It was a diss. He wasn't acting ignorant of who Chappelle was. He was dissing Dave Chappelle, either because he's guilty or because he doesn't like Dave Chappelle or because he doesn't respect Dave Chappelle. Whatever the reason, he was little boying Dave Chappelle, because Dave Chappelle, guy who has 2 successful seasons of a show versus guy who has 20 years of dominance in music, maybe I don't respect your work ethic, Dave Chappelle. Maybe I look at guy who was famous for a little while, couldn't take the heat and left. Maybe I, who stood a trial for a sex scandal and kept staying out making music, maybe I don't respect you, Dave Chappelle. Who? You mean the guy who left because business? R. Kelly, I gotta recognize you? Nigga, I ain't gotta recognize you. I don't have to show you any attention. You're not relevant to me. I'm bigger than you. I've done more than you. I've done more work. It doesn't matter what people think, who people think you are. Nigga, I know that I've done more than you. I've seen, like, there was a video that R. Kelly did, like, kind of in response to Trey Songz. He didn't mention his name, but he was talking about how he respects music and how he didn't speak against people like a Stevie Wonder or, other people. If I can find it, I'll leave a link to that. He was speaking on, like status and people who have left a legacy. So if this man believes in legacy, believes in work, and he works as hard as he does, In the article, he said that he wrote some 470 songs for the Buffet album just because he was wrapped up in the work, and he eventually put out an album. So if if a man with that kind of work ethic, if a man that has been through the fire as much as he had for what he has, and stood up against it, has to hear about somebody who basically, shamed him. And Dave was trying to be funny. I'm not dissing Dave for making the sketch. It was funny. Both parts of it. The pissing and the pissing remix. It was hilarious. But if I'm R. Kelly and a nigga made a joke about me, I ain't gotta respect the nigga for it. I ain't gotta be like, ha, it was funny that you made a video, that basically said I was a criminal. Yeah, that was hilarious. Like, what is he supposed to say? He's supposed to little boy him because he, in reality, in the world of accomplishments, he's done more. Now Dave Chappelle makes a lot of money on the road as a road comic. He's not small time. He's one of the highest paid, comedians doing it. But he doesn't have a resume. He doesn't have a body of work. He doesn't have to deal with mainstream scrutiny and still be productive. That's something else. And if I'm R. Kelly, I ain't got to respect the Dave Chappelle from my position. From R. Kelly's position, I don't have to respect Dave Chappelle. So that's what that was. He wasn't saying, I don't know who Dave Chappelle is. I've never heard of him. He does comedy? What? He was on comedy. It wasn't that. It was a diss. But that addresses pretty much the main talking points of the Breakfast Club. There was a person out there on some video I was watching. It may have been in the Breakfast Club. I responded to one of their comments where they said, something to the effect of, it's the old, I was sexually assaulted, so the sexually assaulted becomes the perpetrator excuse. Now, I responded to the guy in the comment section, and then he basically said something that I can't remember at the moment. And then I responded back, and he never got back to me. But what I basically said to him is, you're saying that people who are sexually assaulted, that there's no excuse or there's no justification for them becoming perpetrators, and to imply that people who get sexually assaulted and who sexually assault others are full of shit, that at a certain age you should just grow out of whatever happened to you. You should just get over whatever happened to you, and you should just do right. You're an adult. You should know right from wrong. And I asked him, it's like, how exactly is he supposed to know what right and wrong is? Like, who taught him? Did the church teach him? Did his mother and father teach him? Like, where is his moral code supposed to come from? Is it supposed to come from the law? Is it supposed to come from society? What makes you think that in his mind, if he is guilty of what you think he's guilty of, that he actually believes in his heart of hearts that he is really wrong for it? It's like, do you think everybody agrees on what is and what isn't right or wrong? Do you think we all have a uniform understanding of right and wrong, or a uniform agreement on what right and wrong is? There are rules in certain society. There are customs and there are cultures. In this society, we have a ton of rules, and those rules are called laws. And if you break the rules that are called laws, then there are certain punishments that are levied out to you. Nobody is actually trying to rehabilitate and, transform you into the person that they expect you to be, but they will punish you and castigate you in the public for violating a rule. So if you believe R. Kelly is a habitual a rule breaker as it pertains to sleeping with underage girls, then you can feel about that however you want. But you cannot say that there isn't a connection between being abused and abuse, because people who be, people who become murderers, violent rapists, people who people who rob, people who steal, every basically anybody you can find in a maximum security prison will report some kind of history of abuse. So unless you're saying that they all are full of shit and they just should have known right from wrong and they just should have done right because everybody got it bad, then you're not being, you have a position, you have a feeling, and you have an arrogance about what you feel. So you don't feel that anybody has any right to do something that there is no excuse for somebody misbehaving, that there is no reason for anybody to misbehave, that nothing is an explanation. Everything is something that they just wanted to do because they're evil. It doesn't have anything to do with what happened to them. So if that's your opinion, let it be your opinion. There were many things in this article, and I recommend that you go out and check out the article for yourself. Um, the guy formerly known as the nigga with tattoos, Robert Perkins, made a video a while ago about the R. Kelly situation when he walked out of the interview, which is probably the main reason why he did this interview. And I really don't understand why people jump down R. Kelly's throat for doing the GQ interview now. They're probably, every black site probably jumped down his throat because that's what black people do. They tear down black legends. But what I can't understand is they beat up R. Kelly for walking out of an interview. But when he does a GQ interview, which is basically trying to take ownership over the situation, trying to direct the energy, trying to manage the story and do some damage control, they beat up on him for that too. So which is it? Like what exactly do you want from the man? Now, I guess you probably just want him to go away. But if you really want it that bad, if you really want R. Kelly to go away, then you should physically go out and do something about it. I'm not a person um, who really gives a fuck about evil people. I think there's so many evil people in the world that if you started trying to get rid of, or punish everybody that's doing wicked shit, then you would cut the population of the world in half. Right up in 2 seconds, you just kill off half of the 7 billion people. In 2 seconds, you just get rid of half of them, and then it would take a month for you to get like 90% of the rest. So if we getting rid of wicked motherfuckers, then we got a lot of cutting to do. So I don't really give a fuck about that. I don't care about wicked people. I just care about order. I just care about making a way for people to not be taken advantage of. With the R. Kelly situation, and I recommend you go check out Robert Perkins' video because he made a lot of good points. But these girls that R. Kelly is accused of being with, if you are of the opinion that R. Kelly is guilty, or that he is a habitual sleeper, uh, uh he is a habitual molester of underage females, that alone makes him a bad guy. What are you implying about R. Kelly's sexual fetish for women who it is illegal for him to be with? What is the implications of him being with these women? Now, most people claim to have seen the R. Kelly sex tape. I did not. Um, when the situation was still fresh, when the situation was new, I looked for the tape. I was unable to find the the R. Kelly sex tape. Now, I was so young at the time that it was that even though technically that's child porn, it wouldn't have even been illegal for me to see it because I was at an age where if I slept with an actual 14-year-old, I wouldn't have gone to jail for it because we would have been like 2 years different in age. So so I looked for it and I didn't find it, but most people say that they saw the tape. What they didn't say when they saw the tape is that R. Kelly took that girl's virginity. They didn't say that. So they didn't say that the girl looked like she didn't know what she was doing. They didn't say that either. So apparently, this girl in the tape with the man who you believe to be R. Kelly was sexually active before she met R. Kelly. She was already sexually active before. Now, unless you believe that it was an ongoing situation and R. Kelly was her first time, and that was just the occasion where he videotaped after he had got her primed and ready, that's a whole nother discussion. But logically speaking, let's just assume that that was one of maybe a few encounters, that this wasn't his longtime girlfriend. Let's assume that that was one of the few times that he did it. So that would mean that she was sexually active previous to being with R. Kelly. So my question is, if a 14 or 15-year-old girl is sexually active, is having sex on a regular basis, what difference does it make who she has sex with next? What difference does it make? Is her sleeping with somebody who is 15 years older than her doing more damage to her psychologically and emotionally than the 5 or 6, 15, 16, 18, 19 year olds that she just got done fucking with? Is her mind like so screwed, so much more screwed up? Is she so much more beat down and destroyed? Like, if R. Kelly had never been in this child's life, are you saying that she would have been a Nobel Peace Prize winner and she would have, you know, got her doctorate degree in neonatal health care, and she would have been a world renowned writer and lecturer and philanthropist, and R. Kelly came in with his slick talk and his R&B swagger and fucked it all up? What are you implying? What are you like you're trying to make the man out to be some kind of a monster, and I'm not saying he's not. For all I know, R. Kelly got bodies buried in his backyard. I'm not saying he's a good person, but I'm dealing with what you are accusing him of. Only that. What you're actually mad about. How much damage, how much of a burden, how much of a scourge on society is R. Kelly really, if that's his fetish? I saw that the Breakfast Club did a story on R. Kelly, but there was another story that came out that I have not yet, or I just overlooked them talking about. They are opening up they are opening up a school, and I did a video on this. They are opening up a school for LGBTQ students in Atlanta. They are opening up a school for children who consider themselves gay, lesbian, bi, transgender, whatever. They're opening up a school for them. And children as young as 5 years old can be permitted into the school. Where is your outrage at sexualizing and 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 perverting the minds of underage children? Why didn't you make a 10 or 20-minute video showcasing your disgust for putting sexuality and sexual thoughts and taking advantage sexually of young children when the LBGTQ school in Atlanta announced that it was opening up, primarily showcasing black faces as the face of this school that they want to run? There was no outrage. There was no video. I have not seen you comment. If you have commented, I apologize for not seeing it. I'll go back and I'll leave a link to it. But no outrage, no disgust, no disdain, no vitriolic anger. No, why are you doing this? What is the point of this? Why make 5-year-olds talk and speak on their sexual preference, but you're so disgusted by R.Kelly sleeping with the willing because that fetish isn't a fetish that you approve of. You know, I really have an issue with selective outrage. You know, you can call me whatever you want, but I told you that I'm amoral. I don't have any fixed moral code. You know, so I'm not in it to punish anybody or to make anybody the bad guy. I'm not the punisher. I'm just an observer. I'm just trying to get mine and go home. And not hurt anybody in the process, and not hurt them because I want them, I wish them well, but not hurt them because when you hurt people, they usually want revenge for being hurt. So I'm very careful not to hurt anybody. So if you have this feeling, why do you have selective outrage? Why is your outrage about what's happening to children selective? And why are you so passionate about R. Kelly needing to be silent and not equally as passionate about 5, 6, 7 year old children should not be having long ass conversations about their sexual urges and put in a school that just reinforces a particular sexual urge and a sexual um preference? No outrage from you on that. And I got a lot of respect for Charlemagne. You know, I got a lot of respect for a lot of people. It's just sometimes I don't understand and I don't agree. Now, I don't want to run out of time and I don't want to make this a two-part video. But there was a lot of good things in the article that I just want to touch on briefly. I talked about him having the 470 songs that he wrote for Buffet. Just a phenomenal work ethic. Just a man who, even though he lacks the ability to read, he lacks the ability to write, he finds a way to be incredibly creative. If you listen to him speak and you listen to him talk, it's like this man could really go from being probably one of the best to have ever did it to something that can't even be described if somebody could get a hold of him and could properly educate him. He probably has like some form of this dyslexia, or he probably has some type of learning disability. And if he really got, educated, and he got a better vocabulary, a better, understanding of English, and he really could put words together better, he could really go from being one of the greatest of all time in his music and what he did to just being something that you can't even describe. He could be Beethoven. He could be that. But his limitations are holding him back. You know, I love R. Kelly's music. I love what he does, but anybody who listens to R. Kelly knows that he can be quite simplistic. And it's beautiful for its simplicity, but it would be amazing if he could add complexity into his game, if he could be complex and deeply thought provoking and intricate. If R. Kelly could be intricate and complex and really dense, a dense thinker, if he could incorporate that into his music, I just think he would be on a level that no one would ever be able to get next to him, ever. And even with all of the hate, even with all that people say about him, then there would be no way that they could deny it. But I really wish and I hope at some point he finds somebody who can develop a good rapport with him, who can properly educate him, who can properly give him the level of knowledge that he needs. He's 48 years old. Hell, Ron Isley kept performing at a very high level well into his 70s. Charlie Wilson is still out there performing, so there's time for him to get educated, formally educated in grammar and in language and in complex thinking, where he can explain things better and he can paint better pictures with his words. He's already great, but I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but I would like to see that evolution. He was very careful with his words in the interview. He was asked about the trial. The interviewer asked him about the trial, and R. Kelly made a really good point that the interviewer and a lot of people in black culture assume that everybody thinks he's guilty. And R. Kelly asked the question, well, okay, the people who think I'm guilty, they buy my albums? And the interviewer said yes. So the people who think I'm guilty come to my shows and they sell out my shows and they buy my merchandise? They say yes. So you believe the people in the jury thought I was guilty? Why didn't they convict me? Because they liked Ignition so much? And that just made me laugh. It's like people in the jury didn't convict him because they liked Ignition. Now what the interviewer said is, no, they didn't convict you because the girls didn't testify, and couldn't be sure that the girl on the tape was underage. Well, if somebody is clearly underage, then that's not something that's hard to figure out. If somebody is 8 or 9, if somebody is clearly underage, you're not going to be able to wiggle out of that. Oh, we couldn't get a witness. We couldn't get the person to testify. We can't be sure that that's an 8-year-old. There's no wiggle room if somebody is obviously underage. You're not getting away with that bullshit. So the fact that they said it was because nobody would testify is kind of some bullshit. If they knew for a fact that R. Kelly was guilty of sleeping with a child, he would have been convicted and they wouldn't have needed a witness. They don't need no goddamn witness. What the fuck you talking about? He black. Need no goddamn witness. So he talked about the Sears Tower in Chicago and growing up with them just building the Sears Tower and how he felt about it and how he felt like how he and his friends, when they were standing next to it, it was so big and so enormous that they felt that, it could come down and fall on them. It was like a childhood, like fear, but he had the courage to stand up next to it and said, I want to be as tall as the Sears Tower in stature, in life. And I really thought that could be a great song for R. Kelly. I want to be as tall as the Sears Tower. I thought that could be a great song, and R. Kelly can make that song. Um, when the interview was coming close to a close, the interviewer started to. It was kind of objective, very objective in the beginning, and like towards the end, he started throwing darts. Just little jabs at R. Kelly, like little things, little digs at R. Kelly, and the overall and how the article ended left you with a very negative impression of R. Kelly. Now I'm up to 40 minutes, so this shit is about to cut off on me. Um, he talked about generational curses and how things can be passed down. When he was asked about generational curses, he said, well, poverty is also a generational curse. And I broke that so I can break the generational curse of being sexually assaulted. He talks about a family member, a female family member, sexually assaulting him from the age of 7 to 14 or 15. He talked about Aaliyah and how he felt about her and how they were best friends and how their relationship was non-sexual and how he didn't want to violate, the family trust. He talked about how I may not speak up for Aaliyah and how it may look like I'm just trying to protect myself. But Aaliyah was a grown woman before she passed. If she or her mother or her father or anybody wanted to speak up against me, they had more than enough opportunities to do so. And I think that was a good point, because when he said that, my mind immediately went to Robin Givens. Robin Givens was like 20 or something years old, when the, alleged assault that Mike Tyson did against her popped off. She didn't have any problem getting on all media sites. To this day, she'll still step up and say something. 20 years later, she'll step up and say something. So she did it in the moment. She did it with Mike Tyson sitting right next to her. She did it with him there. That's how cold Robin Givens is. So you telling me that a 15-year-old girl that got taken advantage of, that got manipulated and lied to and did wrong by the big bad R. Kelly, once she got away from him and wasn't under his grips no more, she just didn't want to talk about it. She just didn't want to throw somebody under the bus because of some asinine reason that you can't come up with. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm just saying that if Aaliyah felt bad about it, then Aaliyah had time to say something about it. If Aaliyah's family felt bad about it, then Aaliyah's family had time to say something about it. Apparently, they were comfortable enough with whatever R. Kelly gave them or said to them that they didn't pursue it. So why are you still bringing Aaliyah's name up when you're talking about R. Kelly? I'm not saying you don't have a right to speak. I'm not saying you don't have a right to bring it up. But I'm just saying, if you're trying to imply that somebody was hurt, them hurt people didn't holler very, very much. That them hit men and women didn't holler. A lot of hit people holler. And I'm trying to close this. Up. Like I said, they were one thing I liked is, back with the Chappelle thing, he said, I have no respect for comedians when it comes to being serious. And that's why I go out of my way to say that, once every purple moon, you may get a slight chuckle out of something that I say. by accident. But I'm not trying to be a comedian, and I'm not trying to be funny, because I'm dead ass serious about everything I say. I may not be correct in what I say. I may have a flawed opinion. I may be trying to be humorous to make a point, but I have a point, and the point comes before being funny. A comedian can always run back into these just jokes. So when he said, I have no respect when it comes to comedians being serious because it's a joke, I resonated with that, because comedians like to just throw shit out there and not have to defend what they say. That's why Patrice is my all-time favorite comedian of all time. Patrice O'Neal is my favorite comedian ever, because he didn't just say shit, he would defend shit. There was nothing that came out of his mouth that he wouldn't defend with his life. Same thing with Paul Mooney. Those guys, they're comedians, and their job is to crack jokes and to slang jokes. But when they say something, they mean it. They may technically be a comic, but they mean what they say. So I appreciated that. So I appreciated him for saying that. So all in all, I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate it if you watch, this video. I could probably go on for a while. I kind of wanted to ask the question, is it possible? Is it possible for R. Kelly to be redeemed? I'm not a person who, speaks in any type of religious context. I don't speak on that. I don't like to use that or bring that into a conversation. But one thing within religion, one thing within the justice system, there's something called redemption or atonement or paying your debt to society. If R. Kelly, according to him, would have taken a deal for his crime, he would have done 8 months in jail. He would have done 8 months in jail, and because he's a man who can barely read, who's a celebrity, then presumably he would go right back to making music. Is him doing 8 months in jail what you wanted him to do? Is that what you had in mind for R. Kelly? For him to do 8 months in prison? Would that have satisfied something for you? Let me know in the comments if you watched this video. And lastly, my final impression of his interview, and I thought it was a good interview, but my final impression of the interview is that R. Kelly, very likely could be a pathological liar. He very likely could be a pathological liar, and he may in fact be guilty of what he is accused of. And he may even be guilty of shit that he's not being accused of. He may be an awful, wicked human being that got bodies buried in his backyard that we don't fucking know about. But what they are accusing him of, being a pathological liar and a man who has a fetish for 15-year-old girls, if you got a problem with somebody sexualizing kids, then you need to go see that school in Atlanta. You need to go talk to them, because they sexualizing 5-year-olds. They may not be touching their genitalia, but they having a whole institution under the guise of a sexual act. And you can't tell me that somebody in that school ain't gonna get fucked by one of them teachers in that school. You a motherfucking lie if you say it ain't gonna happen. So son, they setting some kids up to get fucked. I'm not saying they gonna fuck the 5-year-olds, but they may fuck the 16-year-olds and the 17-year-olds and the 18-year-olds. They may fuck them when it's legal, but they getting some butt and some vag ready for them to munch and stick. They creating a factory for them to have people to play with in Atlanta. Where's your outrage for that? So the interview ended, and I think it was very deliberately about R. Kelly possibly lying about where he was when his mother passed away. And there was two stories: either he was in the studio when his mother passed, or he was by his mother's bedside. And the whole thing arose because he told an impromptu story for a GQ photo shoot, and he told this story about him being at his mother's bedside and she dying while he held his hand. But his book and a previous interview contradicts the story. Well, maybe he's a pathological liar, but one thing is for sure: R. Kelly is an enigma. R. Kelly has complexity. R. Kelly has had a lot of struggles. R. Kelly is not very easy to put in a box. He's not very easy to understand. He has some things that he may lie about, some half truths, and some, just inability to express himself properly due to a poor education or a learning disability, or maybe even a form of autism. R. Kelly may have a form of autism that's undiagnosed. So I just want people to, think more deeply, and show black people, especially, show some honor and show some respect to people who are putting in great work. You ain't gotta love the man. You can hate the man. You can do whatever you want to the man. But let's hold up, what is great and what is phenomenal in high regard. Um, I don't appreciate that the interview ended the way that it did. I was expecting for it to end in a more objective fashion, but you can argue that because that was the last thing that he was able to ask and able to fact check, that had to be the last thing he asked. But I think that how they were stacking it up and how he was taking jabs, that it was obvious that he was trying to leave you with a bad taste in your mouth about R. Kelly. One of the lines that stuck out to me, and I'm going to end this, is that he referred to two of R. Kelly's assistants as smartly dressed middle-aged women. That is a very underhanded diss. Because what woman likes to be referred to as middle-aged and smartly dressed? That was a diss to whomever was in his entourage. He didn't say two, beautiful, well-dressed women. He didn't say no smartly dressed middle-aged women. Two, two, two raggedy old bitches. But he just dressed it up a little more than that. Two basic bitches, two basic old bitches walked in for R. Kelly to take some notes. So I saw that he was taking a turn. That's why I think that this was probably a white guy who did the interview. But anyway, I'm going to end it here. You can feel about R. Kelly however you want. But my whole thing is about black media. My whole thing is about the conversation and the discourse. And I want people to use, more than one speed when it comes to thinking, and more than one. Just think more deeply about people and ask yourself, can R. Kelly ever be redeemed? And if so, what would he have to do? Does R. Kelly have to do what Charlemagne said that Bill Cosby had to do and just pass away? And that would be the only way that he would ever, have any type of life. Is he that evil? Did he cause that much harm? Did he hurt people that bad that there's nothing that he could ever do that he would be able to be redeemed? But that's all I have to say. Leave me your comments, like it, dislike it. Check out some of the links of the other people. I forget, all of the videos that I've seen. I gotta I'm trying to write it down now. I'm gonna leave some links to some of the videos that he made, so you can check it out for yourself. The Breakfast Club interview, so you can check that out for yourself. So let me know what you think. Leave me comments, like the video or dislike it. Be honest. Subscribe to my channel if you want to keep up with the videos that I'm making. If you want to send me an email, you can email me. The link is in the description. TheMrMaskman@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter or find me on Facebook at TheMrMaskman. That is all I have to say about this subject. So I will see you in the next video.